Hey, what's up YouTube? You clicked on this video because you wanted to learn how to flip and pitch. So let's get right into it. I learned to do this in about 2 minutes, and you can too. Now you can learn this technique with any rod and any line. What I learned with was a 6'6" rod that was a medium moderate. I used a mono line. Now I just used that to learn that's not what you would want to use if you were actually on the lake flipping and pitching. You're going to want a braided line with a heavy rod and a fast action, which is what I have in my hand here. Now I actually think that the 6'6" rod being a little shorter, it was a little easier for me to learn this technique. So use that if you want to. Also what I do is I take a lipless crank and remove the treble hooks from it. The reason I do this is because you're going to have this bait in your hand a lot and you don't want to be worried about getting hooked when you're learning the technique. So I recommend taking the hooks off a bait and using that to learn this technique. One other thing you need to know about this technique is this spool has to turn very freely. So I've got all my brakes off and I've got my tension knob backed way off as well. You're going to use your thumb to stop the spool from spinning. That's the best way to do it because you're going to get more length on your cast. Now I promised you that you'd be able to learn this quick, so let's go do it. The absolute quickest way to learn this is to be consistent with what you're doing. So first off, you're going to want to be consistent with where you're putting your lure and how much line you're letting off your spool. So press your button, release your spool. What I like to do is I bring my lure down even with my reel. Okay? Now, you're going to bring your rod tip down and across your body like this. I like to get that rod tip about a foot off the ground. Keep this line tight. And what I mean is don't put slack in it like that. You don't want to be pulling on your rod tip, but you don't want slack in your line. Okay? Now here's your little exercise that should help you learn to cast like this. You're going to use your mechanics that I'm teaching you, but you're just going to swing this lure back and forth. Okay? And it's going to work best when you're raised up in your position, you put your rod tip down, and you swing that back and forth. Let me show you how. Okay, got that there. Rod tip down and across my body. I'm going to release this lure as I start to lift my rod. Okay, you see how that line stayed tight. Now I'm not getting any slack in that line like that. I'm keeping it tight, lifting my rod tip, and this lure shouldn't touch the ground. See? Now one thing to practice is to keep that rod tip here. Make it stop. Don't bring it up high, because then your lure is going to go straight up in the air. So you want to swing it up and stop it, okay? Do this a few times and feel that. Feel the weight of that lure on that line. And make sure you're keeping this line tight. Once you practice that a little bit and you feel comfortable that you can keep that lure off the ground and you're stopping that rod tip at a certain point, then go ahead and try to cast. Now what I like to do is I like to set up a target. What I'm going to use today is just a little square box, and I'm going to cast at that box. Now one of the main things when you first start casting is to thumb that spool. And you want to thumb that spool before you get close to your target, because if you don't and you hit that target, you're going to get a bird's nest. So before this thing hits the ground, thumb that spool. You may not hit your target, but it's going to keep you from bird's nesting. And then as you get better at casting, then start thumbing at that target. Just take your lure, point your rod tip down. You're going to keep this line tight. Hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, give it a thumbs up. subscribe to the channel. Give me some comments down there if you have any questions or anything like that. And until next time, go fish.